Hey guys, this is Dan from Let's Tank, and today we're going to be talking about the nerf to threat generation in the BFA beta. Now, for some of you who aren't aware, threat's been nerfed across the board for all tanks. So instead of doing what we're currently doing in Legion, which is 10 times that of, say, a DPS, that's not taking into account artifacts, power and stuff like that. On the BFA beta, we're only doing 4 times the amount. Now, what that'll mean for a lot of classes is it's just going to be a flat threat nerf across the board. Some classes getting affected more than others. Now, to put this into comparison for a few of you guys, because some of you might not really care or be aware of how significant this is, Skittish currently nerfs our threat by 80%, and for a lot of classes the overall nerf, like through all your abilities, is going to be roughly 70 to 75% overall. So you're going to be pretty much under a constant effect of Skittish, not as much, but pretty much on the same level. So if you've ever tanked a dungeon with Skittish, you know how much of a pain in the ass it is to keep hold of them big AoE packs. So in the wider scheme of things, there's going to be a lot of tab targeting or clicking them nameplates and watching you threaten multiple mobs instead of just going ham and doing a basic rotation like a lot of players are used to now. This, however, does encourage different type of gameplay. It means you've got to watch a few more things as a tank. You've got to be looking out for them side mobs that may lose aggro, and also for DPS not going ham on the wrong target or the tank's off targets as soon as he pulls stuff. So currently in the beta, you can really feel the effects of this nerf. It's very obvious when someone's not hitting your current target, or they just want to do their own thing and don't really follow what you're doing as a tank. For example, on the pull, if you just drop, for example, a D&D and use a blood boil, and then you start hitting one of the targets, say with a Morrowind or something, one of your single target abilities, and one of the DPS decides to single target something else, that mob is instantly going to snap off you. Also, if say one of the DPS, I think it was a Frost Mage in the dungeon I ran, got a lucky crit on the mob and chunked it, it'd just lose aggro straight away, so you'd have to snap taunt it. So you've got to be really paying attention to the mobs and what's happening and what the DPS are doing, which is something I really like actually. It makes me feel a lot more engaged with tanking again, I should say. Recently I've just been AFKing, not really paying attention and just doing your basic rotation, as there's no real challenge in it, and all you really had to worry about was your defensive cooldowns, which, considering I've been tanking for so long, has really been boring gameplay over the past few years, probably since Wrath of the Lich King, when threats started getting less and less important. So what does this mean? Does it mean, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to tank anymore, everything's changed, No, it's definitely not. It's just going back to something that's going to engage you more as a tank. And the only real struggle you're going to have is adapting to how it used to be. Which, to be honest, how the game's evolved now with all the AoE mechanics isn't as hard as it used to be. Back in the day, you used to have to like tab target Sunder 3 and stuff like that. Whereas now you can pretty much just put an AoE ability on it and probably just like do a shield slam or something like that on it, and you'll probably hold aggro for the most part. Unless you got one of those crazy DPS who's either overgeared or just not paying attention or doesn't really care, and they're just hitting the off target and going full ham, full cooldowns into it. Then you're going to have some problems. However, you shouldn't really be finding that too much, as it's a team game and the whole team needs to work together. You may need to, as a precaution, start to keybind markers like skull and X's again, and just quickly put them up, just so the DPS have like a visual to know what target you're going to be on. And also priority targets like casters and stuff like you used to back in the day, instead of just doing big AoE pulls. And once you get used to this and not really worry too much about it, just have it in the back of your head that it may happen, they may be pulling the threat off you on some targets, but don't really worry about it too much, and you should adapt to this change extremely well. Now, as I just mentioned, DPS are also going to have to get used to this change, especially DPS who have stuff like MDs and tricks, as you probably noticed that a lot of them don't really use these. Some of the higher end raiders do still, but a lot of them just won't bother, and they'd rather just prioritise their own DPS, which, if they're going to be pulling aggro, especially mythic pluses and stuff, when the damage is a lot higher on the mobs and they're going to pretty much one-shot them, they're not going to be wanting to do that as much. So DPS also getting used to the changes is going to be a big thing, and getting them tricks of the trades out and MDs and stuff is going to be a huge thing, especially for you on pulls and stuff, when you're going to have your taunt up on the main target just to get that booster threat, as they'll also increase the generation of threat on that target for you, as well as the off targets. So as I said, it is a team game, and making sure everyone's using all these threat generating abilities for the tanks is going to help them a lot. And especially for the new tanks, if you're a DPS, for example, and you do see a new tank and he's struggling with that threat and you do have this MDR tricks, just put them up on cooldown and just start going ham into the targets for him, because it will boost this tank's confidence even if he doesn't realise you're doing it, and he'll feel great after the dungeon, and it's going to make these new tanks want to come back to the game and keep on tanking for you. And after some time, a few months of the X back, all these tanks who've come back, who've been getting this little bit of help, will start to realise like, oh, taunt's helping me, Taunt keeps the target on me and it increases my threat and all this stuff. So if you are a DPS watching this, just make sure you push in the confidence levels of these new tanks to get them tanking back, because you probably will see a little bit of a drop of tanking from all these like newbie tanks who haven't really had to worry about threat and haven't really been getting shouted off the DPS like they used to because of pulling aggro and stuff and calling them a noob. So if you can just boost the confidence, keep that level of toxicity down, because you've got to understand like it is a pretty big change, especially for tanks who haven't been doing the mythic pluses and been affected by the skittish affix. Then they're not going to quite understand why they're losing the aggro, especially guys who don't watch videos or keep their head in the know, if you know what I mean. So finally, let's talk about why have Blizzard done this, let's say, nerf to threat. And in my personal opinion, this is my opinion, there's a lot of other opinions out there as to why they've done it. My personal opinion is they've done it because of the actual engagement that tanks have been having with tanking in general. There's a lot of difference from tanking, say, Mythic Plus to tanking a raid boss. And that big difference is when you're tanking a raid boss, for the most part, you're going to be stood there, just taking the hits, rotating your cooldowns, and that's pretty much it. You may do the odd mechanic like dodge a fire swirl, or move the boss around a little bit, or if you're a Death Knight, grip some ads like an Agromar, but for the most part you just stood there. Whereas in Mythic Plus dungeons and dungeons in general, you're pretty much either blitzing through them and AoE tanking a little bit, or if you're in the high Mythic Pluses, you're AoE tanking with a cooldown up for a few seconds and then kiting the mobs around and not really doing your rotation. You're pretty much just making sure the mobs aren't hitting you and slowing them down in any way you can and CCing them. Whereas what I think Blizzard wants you to do is actually get in there, be doing your rotation, trying to change cooldowns, get the healers cooldown on you and stuff like that, while holding aggro and everything, and making sure the mobs aren't snapping off you and maintaining threat on all these different mobs and working out how much you can actually tank at once to get an AoE ball and kill them all off at once, and making your damage actually matter and your threat matter, which to me is a lot more engaging than running around and slowing mobs down and not really doing anything. But that's my opinion, as I said. So looking forward to BFA. I'm actually really excited for this threat change. Funnily enough, I know a lot of people are like going, no, we won't get the tanks and all this in the queues, but I'm sure if you give them enough feedback and give them a bit of help, as I said, with tricks and MDs and stuff like that, they'll get into the swing of things, they'll get a confidence boost, and all these new tanks will just have to adjust a little bit and get used to the threat change, and people just won't have to go as ham on pulls just to let them build the general threat up on these off targets, and these tanks should settle in nicely. I'll tell you what, guys, I'm so excited for this change. I can't wait for BFA to come out next few weeks / months. I think we've got 2 months to release. I'm going to be releasing dungeon guides to help out all these new tanks and anyone who's not got to test them to know what pulls to do, how to do a few of the skips that I've found in my testing of the dungeons, how to handle certain bosses. Obviously, it'll either be a heroic or the mythics. I haven't really stepped into the mythics yet, but heroics I've done a lot of. I've done like 50 plus of heroics. Just been waiting to see if I can find any more skips, find any more little tricks or anything, but a few of the dungeons are currently bugged and you can't really finish them, so I've been holding back on actually doing any guides in case these bosses are actually getting changed or anything like that. I'm pretty much putting them out like on the last month so that the tanks and stuff are pretty much finalised and set in stone, and the dungeons are pretty much set in stone, or the heroic versions at least. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. Please comment on this video, give me all your feedback, how you guys feel about the threat changes and what you are looking forward to and not looking forward to, and if this change has made you not want to play tank anymore. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on my dungeon guides.